guys, so this is a joint work with Luisa Siniscalchi and Ivan Visconti. So as Mary just said, trusted setup can be instantiated badly. So in this work, we want to do publicly verifiable zero knowledge without trusted setup, but just leveraging the blockchain assumption. So what is the outline of the talk? First, I'm going to say a little bit about. So first of all, I'm going to go over public verifiable zero knowledge, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means to use a blockchain as an assumption for your crypto protocol, and then I'm going to move on to our contribution. So public verifiable zero knowledge is a zero knowledge proof that you compute once, and then you can use it for multiple verifiers. And typically, we associate NISC to public verifiable zero knowledge. It does not have to be this way, but a NISC is publicly verifiable because it's just one message. You compute your proof, you send it to the world, and everybody will believe it, so we'll be convinced. And as we said multiple times, it's becoming more and more important, this property for blockchain application, because people will post their proof, they will put it on the blockchain, and everybody can verify that the computation was done correctly. As Mary pointed out, so publicly verifiable zero knowledge at the moment, so we only require setup assumptions, and because basically it's the same as computing a non-interactive zero knowledge protocol. And we know how to construct them from a CRS, which requires trusted party, or you can mitigate trust using this updatable CRS or using MPC. Or you can use random oracle, and then you have a heuristic construction. Now the question is, given that we already know that these blockchains exist, I mean, they are working, a natural question is to ask is whether in place of a trusted setup, can I use the fact that a blockchain exists to build a publicly verifiable zero knowledge protocol? So basically, instead of using any setup, can I just say, well, because Bitcoin exists, I can build a public verifiable zero knowledge protocol, right? So kind of leveraging these assumptions which are already there, they seem to hold. And this question has been already explored for other tasks. For example, fairness for MPC. We know that it's impossible to have fairness in the standard model, but if Bitcoin, we can maybe leverage Bitcoin to have a fair MPC protocol. Now, before we move on using this blockchain assumption, let's see what it means that we're going to use a blockchain assumption, right? So let's say you want to leverage the existence of a blockchain to build your crypto protocol that you don't know how to build otherwise without trusted setup. So basically what you're actually doing is you are basically using the threat model that we usually use in crypto, which is our adversary's polynomial time. That's the only thing we assume about the adversary. Other things about the network, but mainly is polynomial time. But then you're also adding some constraints to your adversary. For example, you are taking all the constraints that are there for the blockchain assumptions, for the blockchain protocol. For example, if you're using a Bitcoin blockchain, you are also saying that your adversary's polynomial time and does not control the majority of the power. So it's kind of even more constrained than polynomial time. If you're using a proof of stake kind of assumption, was there a question?
Yeah, I guess it just seems to almost supersede the PPT. If you're saying the adversary is linear time, for example, then obviously...
Yeah, it's even more constrained, right? So not only is PPT, but it's also other things, right? You're saying, why did I put it in a little box? Was that?
The things that might even imply PPT, right?
No, if you are... oh, yeah, sure. If you cannot have... Definitely, it's also PPT. Yes. Yes. So then why did I put it in this box? Because there are other things that you're going to take from the blockchain world. For example, in the blockchain, we assume that adversaries are adaptive. So an adversary can corrupt adaptively blockchain players. So one player can be honest today, and tomorrow it might not be this way. It's not necessarily the case that when you build a crypto protocol, you necessarily prove that it's secure against adaptive corruption. But I agree, the choice of the boxes is not good. All right, so that's kind of what you do if you are leveraging a blockchain assumption. Now the question was, can I use some blockchain assumption to build a publicly verifiable zero-knowledge protocol? And there was an answer. This question was investigated in 2017 by Goyal and Goyal, and they show how to build a non-interactive zero-knowledge protocol from proof of stake. What was the idea? Well, the idea is that, this proof of stake blockchain exists. And what is the assumptions under a proof of stake blockchain? The assumption at high level is at any point in time, if you look at the total stake on the blockchain, the majority of it is in the hands of honest parties. That's kind of the underlying assumption, which basically means at any point in time, an adversary cannot make forks, long forks. High level. How can you leverage this assumption to create a NISC, non-interactive zero-knowledge proof? You can you can assume that now the simulator controls the honest parties. And then just using a typical FLS paradigm, your NISC is nothing but a non-interactive WI protocol where you prove either X is in L or I computed a long fork. Right now in the blockchain assumption, any adversary will not be able to do this. Therefore, this NISC is sound. So soundness relies on the fact that proof of stake blockchains work. And zero knowledge relies on the fact that if your simulator controls the majority of the players, then your simulator knows the witness for the longer fork. That's the idea. Now let's look at the soundness. To prove soundness, you assume that your adversary is PPT and does not, and you have an honest majority of stake. For zero knowledge, you assume that your adversary is PPT and, again, the majority is honest, so it's in the hand. The majority of players is controlled by the simulator. But in this particular proof, so there are two additional constraints that are needed for the proof to go through. One is that the zero-knowledge adversary is not allowed to corrupt. So no adaptive corruption of blockchain players. Another requirement for the zero-knowledge proof to go through is that, by the way, honest stakeholders should never reveal their key. Right? So if you have all this, if you have these assumptions, then you can prove that your scheme is zero-knowledge. So basically, what we can see is it doesn't really match the threat model that we assume for the blockchain. Is slightly more constrained, so we're adding more constraints. So what we do in our work, so as a first contribution, we highlight some subtleties, right, that rises when you want to use a blockchain to your crypto protocol. In fact, if you're not careful in matching the threat model of the blockchain assumption that you're using, then again, subtleties can arise. And in fact, we show that in a single adversary playing in the blockchain, like a legitimate player, could break the zero-knowledge property of, I called it GG NISC to refer to the NISC of Goyal and Goyal in 2017. And basically, in light of this, this kind of leaves open again the question on whether we can build publicly verifiable zero-knowledge just leveraging some blockchain assumption. Yes?
Is there a counterexample to the definition or the construction?
It's a counterexample. It's an attack to the zero-knowledge proof, to the zero-knowledge security. So we show an adverse. So no, we are not actually violating. So when you say to the definition or the construction, what do you mean?
I assume that the GGNISC is have a construction and they prove it's secure against their own definition.
Yes.
So you are requiring more. Probably have another definition that.
No, actually, no. We are not. We are within their definition.
I don't think that they have a construction, right? They just use NIWI. I mean, you can look inside the NIWI, but do they actually look? They just say, okay, here's a NIWI. Take a NIWI, and my construction is NIWI of this and this. And the proof is no matter what NIWI you take,
yeah, I think maybe you refer to what type of, how do they frame their blockchain assumption, right? So in fact, yeah. In fact,
difference. So there's like some.
No, so we are actually following their definition, so we are not, yeah. And you'll see, it's not a super difficult attack. It's just, we'll see in a second, and then maybe we can talk again of what was the...
What is the difference between adversary and an adversary playing as a blockchain user?
Because a blockchain user can be honest. A blockchain user, meaning that the adversary does not have to be a corrupted blockchain user. Okay, so in a blockchain setting, if you are, let's say you're a miner of a blockchain, you can be honest, following the protocol. You can be dishonest, doing your own things.
Then you are part of the adversary when you are dishonest.
So here I'm just saying I don't, in order to mount this attack, the adversary does not have to be dishonest in the blockchain protocol. It does not have to be dishonest.
The miners have some choice, and they can, within the rules of the blockchain, bias that choice to break zero knowledge, you're saying?
Yeah, so the adversary...
We talk about stakes.
Yeah, no, so maybe let's go to the attack, and then we'll go back. So the adversary is not doing anything fancy. He's just using, as a user, like you go to the post, you go to the bank, you enter, and you open your account, you are just a user.
There's a relation here between FLP in distributed. It just says if there is one, the adversary is one, but it can be adaptive, there is no consensus. And similar thing holds here.
No, my adversary, no, does not have to be adaptive. No, we'll see in a second. So this kind of leaves open the question of whether we can do PV NISC from blockchain assumption, and we do propose a construction from a generic blockchain assumption that I'm gonna introduce. So let's see, and we prove that our scheme remains as it should be proven, right? It remains blockchain, remains zero knowledge, even if later the blockchain collapses. So even if later all the miners will be malicious or the blockchain protocol is completely changed, the zero knowledge proof, so if I have the strings, which is my zero knowledge proof that I see, remains zero knowledge. It doesn't matter what the blockchain, if the blockchain collapses, still fine.
So blockchain is an assumption that the current specific blockchain is secure, or blockchain is some construction or some machinery that you can use to the zero knowledge. You treat it like...
Yeah, so I'm going to treat it...
What do you mean by blockchain? Is it the assumption that, let's say, Bitcoin is secure? It is like built based on that, you can build the zero knowledge you like to build?
So in this case, my assumption is going to be there exists a blockchain that has this property. And I'll explain, Bitcoin, for example, might have this property.
But will you need to use the machinery, or just the mere assumption that it exists?
The mere assumption that...
If you use assumption, it doesn't matter whether blockchain player do whatever they like.
Exactly.
It's an assumption, it's not a construction.
Exactly. That's exactly what we're trying to advocate in this work. You have to use the blockchain assumption in such a way that you're using some property. You don't have to worry about how is this implemented and what the adversary of blockchain is doing. You just have to worry. So in terms of there should be a decouple. You're using some assumptions about the world, but you have to be careful the way you use it, right? You don't want to use some specific, yes?
About this, but you're relying that blockchain is actually implemented and exists in the real world.
I'm gonna define a property, and I'm gonna say if there is a blockchain that has this property in the real world, then my scheme is secure.
Is this equivalent to something else which will be analog to, I have an adversary. It can take messages or things that are done now and corrupt them, but it cannot corrupt the past. Is this?
Yeah, it cannot corrupt the past for sure.
So this is the same thing.
But what does it mean to corrupt? So,
Go back and change things.
I cannot go back and change the world.
Go back to previous.
But I can learn the states of
You can learn the state,
the
but
states.
you cannot corrupt it.
No, I cannot go back and change what happened in the past. That will be good too. I would love it.
Can we see the rest of your talk? Because I
Yes.
bet
Okay, so let's see if hopefully I answer some of the questions. Okay, so let's first look at this attack that we are suggesting, right? In order to understand this attack, let's look at this construction a bit more closely, GG-NISC. So how it works, we have this blockchain, it's proof of stake. What that means, it means that for every block, there is gonna be an owner of the block, which is the stakeholder that was able to publish that block. and the stakeholders are identified by public keys. And in GG-NISQ, they're going to use this public key for both, the same public key for both signature and encryption. All right, so they're going to prove the following relation: X is in L, or I know a fork of length K, where K, I'm making it, so K is a parameter of their assumption, right? There's a blockchain assumption with there's some parameters. Let's call it K. There are 2 parameters there, but let's call it K. Now, the idea is the following. I have a witness for this relation. I'm going to secret share it with a weighted secret sharing scheme. And I'm going to encrypt each share. Which key am I going to use? I'm going to use the keys of the stakeholders. Which stakeholders? Again, depends on which piece of the blockchain I'm looking at. So I'm going to take a big chunk of the blockchain, and I'm going to see what are the keys used in these blocks, and I'm going to use those keys to encrypt each piece. So each piece is encrypted with a different key. And then I'm going to add a NIWI using growth, for example, NIWI, and saying, well, these are encryptions, are correct encryption under the stakeholders' keys. And these are encryptions of shares. And if you reconstruct, if you have enough shares, you will reconstruct a witness. That's the scheme. Now you can see where things can go wrong here. Now, why am I encrypting under stakeholders' keys? Because in the soundness proof, I want to say if the extractor knows the majority of the keys, then can extract the witness, and then I'm good. I can prove soundness. Oh, NIWI means non-interactive witness indistinguishability. And here we are just saying we add a proof that proves that the statement, these are encryptions under the stakeholders' keys. And from this proof, you cannot distinguish which witness was used. So you cannot distinguish even if this is a witness for X is in L, or if it's a witness for this statement.
So I mean, in a blockchain, the stakeholders often have like signature keys, but you're saying you can also use them for encryption.
So in GG-NISQ, they assume that this blockchain works. This is an additional assumption, but the same key can be used to sign and encrypt, which happens actually with it's not a big assumption. It's true. There are schemes that have this. Right, so now you can see these are important. These encryptions are important for soundness, but now you can see that this creates a problem because now I have this. Remember, these proofs. We're not going to put this proof on the blockchain. Right? This proof, I'm going to give this proof to a verifier. Now, this proof is in the hand of the verifier. The verifier can hold it for many years. And now, and again, this proof is just a bunch of encryptions under stakeholder keys. So you can see how things can go wrong. If the adversary could somehow get hold of these keys, maybe in the future, then the adversary can start decrypting. Okay? And this is why the zero-knowledge, the security proof holds under the assumption that, it's clear in the paper, it's very explicit that, the zero-knowledge works only if the adversary cannot corrupt adaptively. Because otherwise, the adversary can see the proof and then corrupt the stakeholders' keys that he needs for. So that's important. Furthermore, it's explicit that it's assumed that in this blockchain, no honest stakeholder will ever just give their key. Even if there is zero stake on their key, they will never release it. So these are 2 assumptions that they make. And one can think of whether this may be even reasonable assumptions for a real-world blockchain. But so the point that we will try to make is that it's still very dangerous to add assumptions to the blocks. When you use a blockchain, it's very dangerous to add assumptions in order for your zero-knowledge proof to go through. And in fact, we show that even if all these assumptions are true, so the adversary is not adaptive, it's static, honest parties are very nice, they will never leak their key, even in that case, because the blockchain exists, you can show an adversary of zero knowledge, which follows the rules that we gave him, but is still able to decrypt, to break zero knowledge. How do you do that? You basically write a simple smart contract, which you can, right? Because the whole point, these blockchains exist. There are some smart contracts that are run on it, right? And in the smart contract, we called it explicitly decrypt for me. You can make it more subtle. You publish one ciphertext, and you ask stakeholder in exchange of money if the stakeholder can tell you what is the message encrypted. And with the specific encryption scheme that they use, you can, it's such that you can give the randomness used for encryption. So you don't have to reveal anything about your key. You just give the message and the randomness that is used for encryption. And then in order to check if this is a right decryption, you can just run again the encryption function. So you don't, this is what the smart contract will do. And if the values given to the smart contracts are correct, the party gets the money. The stakeholder gets the money. And now you can see in a zero-knowledge adversary takes the key, the proof, and then we'll just publish some smart contracts, pay some people, maybe 10, 15, and then we'll decrypt enough keys, enough shares, and we'll be able to see what was the witness encrypted in this NIWI. And just some observations. So if you think of this, you might think, well, so first of all, here we're not asking the honest stakeholder to reveal the key. We are just asking to use the key to decrypt. So they are not revealing the key, so we're still following the rules. Second, you might think that, yeah, the stakeholder is not really honest because he is decrypting NISC ciphertext. So an honest person will not do that. But we claim that it's not necessarily clear, right? Because the blockchain player is not aware of how his key are going to be used in another external protocol, right? So I don't know that I'm actually decrypting a ciphertext which is part of a proof, right? So it's not like I'm maliciously trying to entrap some honest prover. And similarly, our adversary is not corrupting anybody. The only thing that our adversary needs is to be a user of the blockchain, meaning he needs to have some money so that he can pay people for this smart contract. How much money? Definitely less than the majority of stake. And also, again, this is not a bribing attack. We're not bribing an honest party because bribing assumes that the honest party is going to become dishonest. He's doing something that is dishonest. But here, there is not dishonesty. There is just a smart contract which is legitimate, and I'm not breaking any rule. Yes?
The adversary also maybe blind the encryption such that only, it's undetectable whether...
Yeah, you can re-randomize it. In that case, though, we need to change the smart contract because then you might not be able to give me the randomness. If I re-randomize, you're not going to be able, it's a scheme that you are not going to be able to tell me what is the randomness I used to encrypt. So it will be unclear if I can check correctness of the answer. But definitely, in that case, we need a little bit more sophisticated smart contracts where somehow I have to add some more requirements on what it means for a decryption to be the correct one. Or it might be, at least this is the cleanest I could think of a smart contract, but you can do something, yeah. So, but this is exactly the good point, which is not necessarily the case that I'm going to publish decrypt for me. I can be more subtle, right? And I can maybe say something else. The point is we cannot rely on the fact that the adversary will be as explicit and we can catch him. So the observation what do we derive from our attack is, which was a simple attack, right? It's that we should be careful when we are trying to build an external crypto tool that uses the blockchain. We should be careful of how we are using the permanent secrets on the blockchain, right? Because again, we have to be careful how we use this assumption. We cannot use these secrets because things can happen, and this attack is one example. And then, of course, the other observation is that now we still don't have a public verifiable zero-knowledge protocol from any blockchain assumption. So now it's 3 p.m. How much time do I have?
Started at least 5 minutes late, so...
So maybe 5 minutes? Okay, so in the next 5 minutes, I'm gonna talk about the second contribution of this work, which is, okay, now let's construct a public verifiable zero-knowledge protocol from any blockchain, from a generic blockchain assumption. So I'm gonna define my assumption. You can tell me what you think about it. And then I'm gonna tell you how I use it for public verifiable zero-knowledge. So this is our blockchain assumption. First, I'm gonna assume that every block in the blockchain contains a distinguished field. What is, for a concrete example, if you think of Bitcoin, every block in Bitcoin has a coin-based transaction. What is this transaction? It contains the wallet of the miners who cashes the reward. That's pretty standard. I don't know if other blockchains also have some coin-based transactions, but this is the first thing that we are saying is that we are going to assume that we are dealing with a blockchain where every block has this field where we put a string, where miners put a string. Now, the assumption on the blockchain is that if you take any sequence of n blocks, and you look at these fields, in these n blocks, at least k of them will have unique values in these fields, and at least more than half of them are computed by honest parties, putting some high entropy string on this field. Let me give you an example with Bitcoin that hopefully will clarify what we are saying. So basically, the example that we are saying is, the assumption is that maybe take any 100 Bitcoin blocks and look at the Coinbase transaction. At least 50 of them, so this Coinbase is a wallet, at least 50 transactions will have fresh wallet, which basically means a miner will take the money on a new public key every time. And of these 50, at least 26 were computed by an honest party. That's basically what we're assuming. Another way to think of it is that there is this distinguished field, and in this blockchain that we are envisioning, many times honest parties will put a fresh, a high mean entropy string in this field.
Bitcoin doesn't have this property, right? You need a fair blockchain to get that.
No, actually, why not? So if you think, so I'm not talking about a truly random string. I'm talking about high mean entropy string.
The majority of the blocks are adversarial, even with the low threshold, right?
You're saying the majority of the block.
Why? What do you mean adversarial? What do you mean adversarial?
The adversary can put them. So this is the distinction between honest and fair and unfair blockchain, right? So the point is that you cannot, in Bitcoin, you don't put in the blockchain an amount of block proportional to the work that you invest. You put way less. So even if you have slightly less than majority, still the adversary has much more than majority blocks in.
Okay, but if you assume the adversary controls at most 1/3, then you're okay.
If you reduce
Your constant is just shifted from.
Yeah, but there are attacks that shift the constants very far. That's the thing. I'm not sure exactly what the constant is that will give you majority.
Okay, but so you're talking about the constant that gives you majority, I guess, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're saying.
But so in fact, we don't claim Bitcoin. I mean, I use Bitcoin to say this is what it will mean, right? It will mean that you have this wallet, and mostly honest miners will always put a fresh wallet. We didn't prove that this is satisfied by the Bitcoin. We are just putting up this assumption, and of course, next step will be to see what blockchains will satisfy this assumption.
Or is it sufficient that there's some randomness there?
The majority of this k. There must be some inside the majority of this k. I need the majority. So this, as you can see, there is nothing here about the consensus. We are not assuming really anything about the consensus. We are assuming something that I call it uncertainty at posting time. So basically, yes?
The majority point, you can set k to be n over 10 and take the majority of n over 10.
Yeah.
But so you could adapt it.
But I need to make, so I think Vasily's point is that even you don't know that those are all honest, right? The ratio of honest work on the Bitcoin is not half. That's what you were saying.
What we know about Bitcoin, this so-called chain quality, is that in K blocks, at least one is honest. It's not that the majority is honest. That's what we can prove. And this is like a fruit chains that Raphael is talking in the bootcamp actually get you something which is closer to majority.
My question is, once we fix those numbers about Bitcoin, can't we just choose the parameters of the scheme to just make it satisfied for that one? Because presumably here, some construction will depend in capital N and capital K, but we have to choose these parameters when we construct the scheme. We can just pick them in such a way that it would be satisfied by Bitcoin.
So I don't. So as Vasily said, the problem is that we need this fraction to be honest. So somehow we have to say that it's computed by honest people. And I don't know how to map it to Bitcoin. I mean, I haven't thought about through that much, to be honest. But this is something that definitely we will want to do. The majority of K.
Thank you.
Sorry, yeah, K. N is a big one, K is the smaller one. So this is what basically we would like to picture to capture the fact that when I put a block on the blockchain, there is some uncertainty on strings that there is a lot of enough uncertainty of what are the strings that honest people are going to play in the blockchain. And because there is honest people playing, and I guess the question is how many honest block I can expect, and that's where the Bitcoin problem is coming up. All right, so now I'm just gonna, so very quickly, once you have this assumption, the next building block that we really need is this witness indistinguishability system, which is based on blockchain as well, which we constructed. And we show, this is how it looks. It looks like you put a block, then for the challenge, you wait enough blocks, and then you have a third round. So that's how, basically you can use a Sigma protocol, and you turn it in a publicly verifiable WI. Note that this is not non-interactive, meaning the prover is interactive, but is interacting with the blockchain. The verifier is non-interactive. So the verifier only needs the third round and needs to see what happened to the blockchain. Again, because I have no time, the only property we really need to prove is that our scheme, the previous scheme is WI even in presence of blockchain collapse. Once you have this property, and I don't know, I think now it's like, when you have this property, see, I'm just gonna. Okay, so maybe I'll just stop on this slide. So this is how the protocol works. And these are all commitments. And the key idea is that even if later all blockchain players are corrupted, these commitments are still secure. Because these are not encryption, are just commitment. And the WI property of forward security in presence of blockchain collapse also makes sure that the composition is secure. And unfortunately, I don't have more time, but if you have a question, we can take it offline. Thank you.
I want to ask one last question before break.
Yes.
Question: can it be that the mere assumption that exists a blockchain machinery implies that there exists NIST? I mean, that's the assumption that, for instance,
I think it can. You just have.
Specific, like you're using the blockchain. Can be just assumption it exists.
We know that NIST don't exist in the standard model, but there are no NISTs in the standard model.
But also maybe there's no like really blockchain in the standard model, because you initiate them with random walking. If you have random walking, you have NIST. Maybe the mere fact that there exists some blockchain.
Yeah, but it just exactly. So you have to write down the definition. That's exactly what we did, like the blockchain.
Using the block machine. Maybe that's the assumption it exists.
Yeah, I think what would be a nice.
No, it's not a standard model. Blockchain, I know.
Under the
assumption. But you cannot do blockchain under standard assumption, right? I mean, we don't know.
It depends. If permission, we can.
The hidden random worker inside is something that enables to do.
I think maybe what you're, and I agree with you, so what would be very clean to say that the only property you're going to use, if there is a, blockchains have this property of chain quality or consistency. If there is a blockchain that satisfies those properties, then NIST exists. That will be much cleaner than these things that we did, definitely. And that would be nice, absolutely. And I guess that's what we would like to do, but we haven't gotten yet. Yes?
Michele and Aguilos, where we define such property. I mean, we use it for timestamping, but it's a blockchain that has some notion of unpredictability, independent of how it's implemented.
Okay.
What you can say is that if now I don't know randomness that I could extract tomorrow, do you have this property? I guess you can use
Sure, we can maybe we need this property in some sense. Not extract, but some property. Yeah, definitely. But I think he was talking about if blockchain exists, then it exists. That's what exactly.
Then you can prove it. But in general, blockchain is thought of as just broadcast, just a ledger. And then we know that music was just a ledger we cannot get.
Yeah, that's also true.
Something about the contents of the blockchain, which we do have in most common blockchains, because of what Alice said.
Thank you.
Thank you.
2 minutes.
Where?